You know, I'll never forget, I owned a fly shop for almost 40 years, and a lot of people would call me up and they'd say, I need a piece of deer hair. And I'd say, what are you going to do with it? And a lot of guys would say, what's it to you? I said, because I'm going to pick you a piece of deer hair for that purpose that you're going to use that deer hair for. And I'll tell you why this is so important. You know, you get a piece of deer, a beautiful piece of deer hair like this. This is not leather quality tan. This is taxidermy quality. The hair is not beat to tar. A lot of times you get hair from a leather company, and it's just, you know, the hide is really soft and pliable. It's beautiful hair, but it's very, very fragile. It'll just break. This kind of stuff from taxidermists is very different, a very different kind of hair in that it's got still a lot of natural oils in it. You can actually feel the oils. Same thing with this piece here. This is mule deer. This is whitetail. I prefer whitetail, although some of the mule deer can be really good for purposes like tying sparkle down. And what you're looking for, the first thing you're looking for in a piece of deer hair to tie ex-caddis or sparkle downs are short black tips. If you find a piece of deer hair like this, I don't know if you can see that, but they're long black tips. Then next thing you come down and you find the hollow part of the deer hair, and you have to come way down into the butt ends, way down to the ends to find that this is hollow. The reason you want it hollow is you want it to compress and to flare. If you use fine deer hair that's not hollow and you put your thread in it, it's just going to spin around the hook shank. With this hair, and I'll show you in a minute as we tie a fly, when you put your thread, some tension on it, the deer hair springs, and that means it's going to compress and flare. We'll move right into, after talking about the deer, we're going to move right into tying my favorite dun imitation, my favorite mayfly dun imitation called a sparkle dun. We came up with this fly, 50 years ago for fishing selective fish on the Henry's Fork. And I'll never forget, we tied some prototypes, and the famous author and angler Ernie Schwiebert was walking along the banks of the Henry's Fork. It was raining one June day, pale morning duns coming off, and my old partner John Jurasek and I are just railing the rainbows. And he ran up to us and he goes, what in the heck are you guys using? And we said, why? And we recognized Ernie. We said, well, it's going to cost you. He said, I'll pay you anything. And we took out our sparkle duns. And how we came up with the sparkle duns, sitting at the crossover fence on the Henry's Fork, watching feeding rainbows, big feeding rainbows that we couldn't fool with a standard dry fly pattern. We were trying parachutes and whatnot, couldn't fool them. And what we noticed, being nose to nose with these fish, we saw that they were only keying on nymph patterns as they emerged with a trailing shuck. Some of the shucks were attached to their arms, and the dun was trying to escape that shuck. But every shuck we saw, and it hit us at that time, it was shimmering in the light. And Swisher and Richards came up with emerger patterns using duck quill, and we had mixed success. And I think the reason was because duck quill doesn't shimmer and sparkle. And we come up with a sparkle dun, and we think, God, are we clever? You know, in reading Colonel E.J. Hardingham, The Trout and the Fly Fisher's Point of View, 1937, he talked about tying flies with trailing, shimmering shucks. So I always like to say originality in fly tying is merely undetected plagiarism. But anyway, we're going to tie a sparkle dun as soon as there it is. First key point, sparkle dun, again, is probably the easiest dry fly you can ever tie. But you have to follow a couple of very simple rules and steps. Number one, you have to lay a foundation of your working thread. Again, the hook we're using is an XC240BL from Umpqua and Tiemco. Number two, the thread we're using is Semperfli classic wax thread. This happens to be tan. Yellow also works well, primrose. Any neutral color thread or one that matches the abdomen of the fly you're trying to imitate. And the one we're going to tie today is a pale morning dun. Once again, the deer hair we just talked about. Notice this deer hair, it's almost as if it was stacked already. So we're going to stack it. Ends are fairly uniform. Number two, there's very little guard hairs and fluff, so you don't have to sit here with a comb and comb it out. And if you're a hunter, and you're able to take northern white-tailed deer in the month of October, you're probably going to find this deer here. See how nicely that's stacked? Perfectly stacked. Notice how short those black tips are, and that's key. Okay, we talked about earlier what's going to happen when we put the thread to it in our little foundation of thread that we made here. I'm going to measure it. I want it to be the length of the hook or maybe slightly longer than the length of a hook. And I'm going to pinch it. I'm going to take one loose wrap, another loose wrap. Okay? You see guys putting loose wraps right to them. One loose wrap, another loose wrap, two loose wraps. Now watch what happens when I pull down on it. Do you see that jump? That's what you're looking for. If that deer hair doesn't spring and jump, you don't have the right deer hair. Take it back and tell whoever you got it from you want a different piece of deer hair until you get the one you want. And the reason being, again, now I'm going to pull up on this and I'm going to trim. And I'm going to kind of step this down. You'll see kind of gradually steps down. And the reason being is when we wrap the pheasant tail body forward right to this tie-off point, you're going to get a nice even tapered body, and that's what you want when you tie the sparkle dun. Proper proportion. You know, you see so many people tie sparkle duns and everything looks good until they put the dubbing on, and then they get a great big lumpy body, great big lumpy abdomen. You do not want that. Now at this point, what I do is I'm going to put the shuck on, and I'm going to butt the shuck right up to the wing butts. One loose wrap, now tighten them down, take this all the way back to the bend of the hook. This is your shuck, your trailing shuck. This is dyed mayfly brown Zealon. Now I'm going to take some pheasant tail fibers, 3 or 4 or 5. Just, you know, play with your pheasant tail. Tie a few flies with them. If you go, that's too bulky or that's too thin, either add or subtract accordingly. Now make a loose wrap over your pheasant tail, then go all the way back to the tie-in point of the shuck and all the way back to where you tied in your deer hair wing. Now wrap this forward. This again forms the body that forms the abdomen of your mayfly dun. And I don't know if you can see this, I hope so. You can see how the frilly nature of the material, you can see those little frills sticking out of the pheasant tail barbs. I go back in 3 or 4 wraps and I come forward in open crisscross wraps. That's going to reinforce the body. Now notice I'm not wrapped right up to the butts of this wing yet. The reason being right now, and this is very, very important, a lot of guys right now will say, oh, I'll put the dubbing on and then that'll stand the wing up. Don't do that. It'll stand it up for 2 hours. You come back to your fly box and all the wings have come forward. So this is a real little important kink here. Pull the wing up and divide it in half or thirds and make a wrap. Take the next third, make another wrap. Finally, take the whole wing, all the fibers if you can, and make several more wraps, 3 or 4 more good wraps in front of it. That will, this fly will stand up, the wing will stand up perfectly throughout the whole life of this fly. If there's some fibers that are trailing and hanging down below, don't worry about it. You'll see me messing around with them right now. You shouldn't even do that because you run the risk of clipping your thread or messing the whole thing up. Okay, now with either Semperfli, Kapok dubbing, and this is Semperfli. And notice in Superfine is so easy to put on as dubbing. I mean, whether it's the Kapok or Superfine dubbing. Now, try to stand the wing up as best you can behind. You're going to trap a few fibers, no big deal, because we're going to take care of those in a minute. Couple wraps behind the wing, a few wraps in front of the wing, and then make sure you get a figure 8 around the wing with your dubbing. And then go forward and tie off. Invariably, and you're going to see I have 3 or 4 little unruly fibers that still remain, and just trim them off. And you want that wing to flare 180 degrees. And I'll show you here in a second. One more fiber that's driving me nuts. And there's a little bitty fiber right here on the side that should be gone. Anyway, there is the pale morning done, sparkle done. Easy fly to tie. Wing is flared 180. Trailing shuck. Perfectly tapered body. Tied out of pheasant tail, reinforced with your thread. Great dub bite. This fly will catch. The other day I caught 17 nice fish on the Firehole River with this fly, and it's floating just like the day I tied it. Easy to tie, inexpensive, no expensive hackles. Just a great dry fly, and it catches fish around the world. And tied in different color combinations for the thorax, you can imitate, in different sizes, you can imitate any mayfly activity, any mayfly dun emergence around the world. The PT sparkle dun.